Hello, and welcome to the Ferguson Library online technology classes. And tonight we are going to be looking at advanced Microsoft Word. Now, before we begin, I just want to kind of go over some ways that it works here doing this class online here on YouTube. So the first thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to go to the website right here above my head, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. And when you do, it will take you to this page here. So some of the things to kind of pay attention to on this page up here, right up here at the top, is the link to the Ferguson Library's YouTube channel. And then down here is our upcoming schedule, our past and upcoming schedule. You can see right here, we're into our third class, Advanced Microsoft Word, tonight. And then the link to get to this live stream, which obviously if you're watching this already, you've already found this link and are there. But this is where you'll be able to find the links for our upcoming classes as well, too, to be able to link directly to the classes. But you could also go to the Ferguson Library channel, subscribe to us, and then you'll get notifications when our classes start and when we have classes scheduled to be coming up. So as we scroll down on this page, we move down to here. There are two different parts down here under the online technology class materials and resources. Over here on the left, we have the list of all of our different classes where we have the class materials available. So for this class, you'll want to come down here where it says Advanced Microsoft Word. You'll want to click, and there will be a variety of different things here to download. So the first thing that we have here is the exercise handout, and so that will download and open as a PDF. It will be not showing the way I want it to. It will appear as this download here. This is the exercises that we'll be working on through the course of this class this evening. And then we have a couple of different practice documents. So you'll want to download, you'll want to right click on these here, and you'll want to go to Save Link As, and then save it to a place that you can easily find on your computer. And these will be the couple of documents that we're going to go through and work with our exercises later on this evening. The next link down here we'll go to later on in the class. This is going to be part of one of the final things we'll be doing in the class, is looking at how to collaborate and work with other people in Microsoft Words. And we'll be doing that. We'll be looking at one way of doing that through Google Docs. And then finally, there's a link to our survey link. So if you take this class and you enjoy taking it there, or even if you didn't enjoy taking it, it's just kind of a way to kind of provide feedback. So if I click on this right now and open it up, you can see it's just a brief, as soon as it opens, a brief kind of feedback form that allows you to kind of tell me what you thought of this class and ways that I need to improve. The other thing to pay attention to on this page here is over here on the right where it says chat room. There are two ways to interact with me through the course of this class while it's live. If you're watching this on recording, unfortunately, I can't interact with you at those times. But if you are watching this live now and you want to interact with me, you can either drop a comment in the YouTube chat down below the video here or on the side of the video, depending on how you have it set up. I will see the chat. You are a little bit delayed from where I am, but I will see your questions. And when I think there's a good time to stop, I will go and answer your question. So you can do that in the YouTube chat. But if you do not have a Google or YouTube account and do not want to create one or sign in for this class, you can use this chat room here on the Ferguson Library page. And so I will see this throughout the entire class. And so what you do is you just come down here, just type a message, and you can say whatever you want to do. So please ask questions here. And just hit enter, and the question will show up, and then I'll see it, and I'll be able to answer your question. So if you don't want to use the YouTube chat, you can use the chat room right here. You do not need to sign in. You're automatically in as a guest. So those are the ways to kind of interact. I should probably, let me just kind of quickly go over again, working with some of the things on YouTube. So you want to be able, while you're working on downloading and getting the exercise documents and getting things ready over here. As I mentioned, you're seeing things just on a slight delay from me, somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds. But so you can ask questions, and I might have moved a little bit beyond. Don't worry, I will see your questions. If you have questions, please ask them. It's what helps kind of make this class really kind of go well. What am I saying? Oh, so throughout the class, because most people are probably going to be watching, they're going to be watching this video on one screen, and if you want to follow along and do the exercises, you usually have to then close out, or not close out the video, but like minimize the video and go to Microsoft Word to kind of practice and use the and do the stuff in the documents there. So you can't really see them both at the same time. So what I'll do throughout this class is after I show several steps and explain what we're doing with the different kind of exercises and how to do them there, I'll do a quick run through again of the different steps, and then I'll go and give you 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how long. It might be longer than that, it might be shorter than that, depending on how long I think it should be good to do those exercises there. And then you can go off into your own Microsoft Word and practice those exercises yourself. It's also a really good time to ask me a question either in the YouTube chat or in the chat room here, and that would be a good time for me to answer the question while other people are working on the exercises. So that's really kind of how things work. There will be periodic times where I'll stop and say, okay, now it's time for you to do this here. I'll do a quick explanation again of what I want you to do for the exercise. The steps that we're doing for the exercises are all on here. So like each different individual exercise is listed on the handout here, that first link on the online-tech-classes page. So that's that. So this is Advanced Microsoft Word. What are we going to be doing in this class tonight? So coming into this class, some of the skills that you should already know how to do is you should know how to create a new Word file. You should know how to save and open a saved Word file. You should know about changing the font, size, and format of the text in a Word document. You should know about inserting and editing images into a Word document, as well as inserting and editing tables into a Word document. You should know about how to create and work with the header and footer of a Word document. And you should also kind of have a basic knowledge of Microsoft Word styles. These are all things that were covered in the basic Microsoft Word and the basic Microsoft, or in the intermediate Microsoft Word classes that I've done in the past 2 weeks. If you do need a refresher or you haven't followed along with those courses there, if I come up here, the links here for basic Microsoft Word and intermediate Word will actually go to the recordings of the classes that I've done in the last 2 weeks. So you are welcome to go back to those classes there and watch them through and work on the exercises. I won't be there for live help, but you can still kind of follow along with what I'm doing on there to refresh those skills. What this class will cover, let me go back to the handout here because this is actually on here. We're going to look at how to create lists in Microsoft Words. We're going to look at the difference between numbered and bulleted lists and how to create them. We're going to look at how to use breaks and styles to start organizing long documents and and we're going to be creating a table of contents. So these are kind of some of the little fancy things you can start doing in Microsoft Word once you kind of have these base skills kind of under your belt. Just get this going here. We're going to look at how to format your text into columns. So that's something that a lot of people want to do, is they want to be able to break things into columns. And so we're going to look at how to do those kind of different things as well too. And then finally, we're going to look at how to work collaboratively in Microsoft Word with other people. And so this is going to be things about like working with comments and track changes. So you've probably seen people mention that those kind of things like tracking changes or how to put comments into a document. So if you're working with somebody and they've sent you a document and you want to make comments on there, the best way to kind of do that there, we're going to look at the different formats that you can save and share files in. So if you have different purposes on how you want to share the file with someone, you might decide to do different file formats. And so I'll do kind of a brief explanation of kind of the different file formats that you might want to consider for that exercise. And then finally, we're going to look at working in the cloud. And in tonight's class, we're going to look at using Google Docs, which isn't Microsoft Word exactly, but a lot of it works very similar to Microsoft Word, and it ends up being a really good place for people to work simultaneously on a document or work together on a document. So if you have any questions about any of that there, please ask it in either of the chats. I will see it and answer, but then we're going to kind of move on into the different things that we're going to be doing in Microsoft Word tonight. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at doing is we're going to be looking at doing outlining or creating lists. So to start off, we're going to want to start with a blank Microsoft Word document. So when you open up Microsoft Word, of course, you open up in the new document backstage view that we have here. I usually mention at this point that what I have here on my screen, what you're seeing, is Microsoft Word 365. This is very similar to Microsoft Word 2016 or 2019. So if you're using either of those versions there, everything you see here should be very similar to what you see on my screen here. If you're using an older version, if you're using Microsoft Word 2010 or Microsoft Word 2013, everything we're doing in this class will work in those older versions. It just might be slightly different how to do that there. So if I'm showing you something and you go and work on it and you're not able to find where it is, or it looks different than what you saw on my screen there and such, let me know in either of the chats, and then I will kind of explain where you can find or what the difference might be in your version of Microsoft Word. So just that kind of little caveat there is that what you're seeing here is Word 365, but it's going to be very close to Word 2016 or 2019. So don't worry if your version doesn't exactly match with what I'm showing you here. So let us go into, we're going to create a blank document. So I'm just going to click on blank document, and we have our kind of nice blank document here. So when you create a list in Microsoft Word, there's two different lists generally that you can make. There's bulleted lists, which uses kind of like a symbol. Usually it's like a closed dot and then like an open dot for different levels of that. And I'll show you when I talk about different levels, I'll show you what I mean there. So a bulleted list, and then there's also a numbered list. So a bulleted list is something where you're not going to have a specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something that's not really specific in order. You're just kind of listing the items, and you just want to kind of organize them as kind of a nice looking list. You might use a bulleted list for that there. A numbered list is for something that you want kind of in a specific order, or if you're trying to keep track of how many different items that you have in that list. So it's kind of just the difference between that there. And things like you can choose different styles of numbers. So if you wanted to do something with like Roman numerals, you can change the style so it does the numbering in Roman numerals. You can change the style of the bullet. So instead of it just being like a closed black dot, it could be like a diamond or a star or kind of whatever you want it to be on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually, the easiest way to kind of demonstrate this here is to start working on the first exercise that we have in our exercises here. So if you're looking at the exercises here, we're on page 1, and we're looking at step 1 over here. Just as an example, this here is a numbered list, 1, 2, that's a numbered list in Microsoft Word. So we're going to create a list in a new Word document. So let me go into my new Word document here. And so we're going to start a numbered list. So how do you start a numbered list? There's a couple different ways Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word is clever, and so what you could do actually is you could just start typing the number and hit a 1 and hit space, and you'll notice instantly the 1 moved over from where the edge was, where it started, over, it kind of indented in, and you can see now there's a space between my cursor and the period here. And so what this is, I'm in kind of numbered list mode. You'll notice right up here on the ribbon in the paragraph section right up here, there's this one button here, and this is now lit up, or it's grayed in, saying that this is now active. And if I put my mouse over it, you can see the tooltip is telling me that this is the numbering button, and it will create a numbered list, which is kind of what we wanted to do. So one way to create a numbered list is just start numbering. Hit 1, period, space, and Microsoft Word will automatically trigger the numbering. That automatic thing can be a little bit annoying if that's not what you intended, but it's also very convenient that you don't have to do anything. You just start numbering, and it will automatically start building the list for you. You can also just come up and click on the numbering button up here on the ribbon. So if I click on that, you can see there's my 1, period, and then the space. Just the exact same thing that happened when I hit the 1, period, and then space. It sets it up the same way. So for a numbered list, I figured for this exercise, it's really a kind of a common list that we all want to make is a grocery list. So we're just going to do a grocery list. We're going to have milk. And so you can see I can just start typing my first word right here next to the 1. And when I hit the enter key to go down to the next line, you'll notice it'll go down and it'll automatically enter number 2. So that's the beauty of using the automatic numbered list in Microsoft Word. Now you could turn off that automatic numbering and you could do it manually. You could do 1, period, space, milk, 2, period, space, eggs. In fact, eggs is our next thing that we're going to have on here. 3, but a little bit later on, I'll show you the advantage of using the automatic numbering that Microsoft Word has. So for right now, let's just go in and put in our items into our list here. So we're going to have eggs, bread, canned soup, and we're going to have apples. There we go. So we have kind of a brief, easy list. We have our 5 items in our list here. So now the next thing we want to do is, so as I mentioned, you could have created this list manually. You could have done 1, period, milk, 2, period, eggs, and so on. Create your list that way. But if you wanted to add something into the middle of your list, like for example, if I put this list together in the order that I know that the supermarket is arranged, so that my list actually goes in the order as I start at one aisle and move my way through the store, I all of a sudden realized that, hey, I wanted to get frozen peas, and those are actually in an aisle in the middle of the store. Probably not most supermarkets, but let's pretend in our printed supermarket they're kind of in the middle of the store. And where they are is they actually are in between the eggs and the bread in the store. So if I come up here to eggs, and I wanted to put another entry between eggs and bread on here, what I can do is I'm going to hit enter, and you'll notice that it goes down to a new line. It automatically numbers that line 3, or keeps the 3 on that line, and then automatically renumbers each of the items after it there. So I don't have to go back and manually do it. If I did this list manually, actually, let me just show you. Let me just do a quick, in a program that doesn't have automatic numbering, let me just kind of quickly show you what I would have to, if I did 1 milk, 2 eggs, oops, 3 bread, and then I wanted to add something in between here, I would have to go like here for, you see how I have to now actually go in and like renumber, and I could put in my frozen peas here. Now you see how I actually had to go in and I had to like re-add that number there. Now if I had like 5, like number 5 after that, I'd have to change the 5, I'd have to change this, I'd have to go on and change all the numbers. But here in Microsoft Word, with the automatic numbering, it automatically changes those numbers. So that's really the advantage of using the numbering in Microsoft Word, is that it automatically keeps track of the number that you're on, and then and if you put something into the middle, it will automatically update the list, update the numbering as you go down. So we've done our add frozen peas between the second and third items of our shopping list. So we did that right there. And you can see we got that automatic numbering kind of going through. Now, a numbered list, or any list in Microsoft Word, doesn't just have to be one level. So this number here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is considered one level. This is the first tier. And so this is where we get into the outlining part of Microsoft Word. So a way to kind of start organizing information. So I'm going to go look at canned soup. Now, we all know that there's a wide variety of different canned soups that you can get in the supermarket. So canned soup is not really that great of a descriptor, but they'll all be in the same place in the supermarket. So what happens is I can have this list on here that says canned soup. And then I'm going to go down and create a new line. And you can see there's that automatic numbering. And now what I'm going to do is, if you notice right up here under the paragraph section, again, there are 2 little buttons up here next to, so we have our numbering, we have our list sections right over here, and then right to the right of it is 2 little, and these are our increase indent and decrease indent buttons. And when you increase an indent in a list, whether it's a bulleted list or a numbered list, it moves it to the next level. So if I hit this button here, you'll notice now that my cursor moves from this position here. I just always realize that this is always a little small on the screen. So I'm going to just make it bigger so it's kind of clearer to see for you as you're watching this video. I always have to remember to do that when I'm working with Microsoft Word. So instead of it being here, it's jumped it over to here. And now we have a new kind of like kind of counter here. And instead of it being like a number, they start off with like a lowercase letter. So it's A, and then after it'll be a lowercase B, C, ongoing. And so this is what's known as kind of a sub-level, or kind of the level 2 of the list that we're creating. And so under canned soup, I can do kind of a little sub list under there of the different types. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in kind of the different types that we want to get for our soups that we want to get on our shopping trip. So we're going to do chicken noodle, we're going to get tomato, and we're going to get cream of mushroom soup. And so you can see I hit enter, it came down, and it's giving me each of the different letters. The other thing to notice is that when I went into that new level, remember when I hit enter and it made this level 6 before I hit tab, and then the apples ended up being number 7. As soon as I went in and started my sublist, this came back to being 6. So it keeps track outside of the sublist as well too. So that's what the numbered list gives you, that automatic numbering, and allows you to kind of organize different levels as you're working with as you're working with the different items in your list here. Now, after I enter the list, it's really easy to change like an item. So for apples, I decided, you know what, we want to do more than just apples for in our shopping trip. We actually say we want to make an apple pie. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come here to apples, and I'm actually going to make this one here. Instead of apples, we're going to make it ingredients for, ingredients for apple pie. And then underneath, I'm going to hit down. And so instead of 7, I want another sub list under my ingredients for apple pie. So I'm going to hit tab. Okay, so hold on. I didn't explain about tab. So I could go up and hit the increase indent up here and move it into the next level. I can also hit the tab key on my keyboard. So the tab key is usually, it's on the left side of your keyboard, far left side, and it's usually the third key down. Usually you'll have the escape key. You'll have the tilde apostrophe or tilde accent key that's next to the 1. And then under that will usually be the tab key. And the tab key will actually move in an indent. And so what it'll do is that when I hit the tab key here, you can see it moves it into the next level. And if I hit it again, it moves it to the next level that I have on the list. So you can have a lot of different levels on the list to kind of help organize your thoughts and organize the information that you're putting onto the page. Now, if I wanted to go back an indent, if I wanted to go to the left with an indent, I can hold down the shift key and hit tab, and that will move it back a level as well too. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to put into this list, we're going to put in apples, we're going to put in flour, we're going to put in butter, because you need flour and butter to make your pie crust. I'm going to put in some cinnamon, and we're going to put in some sugar. It's a very basic, probably some lemon juice too. You kind of want to have some lemon juice in your apple pie. But other than that, this is kind of your basic kind of ingredients you need for an apple pie. Learning something more than just Microsoft Word today. So what I'm going to do is I've done a whole bunch of stuff right here, right now. I am going to let you go off into Microsoft Word and create your own numbered list. So kind of a brief run through of the different steps that you'll want to do to follow the exercises. So let's take a quick look here at the exercises here. So we're right here in number 1, and we're moving down to this one here where it says in a sublist, enter apples, flour, butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Don't worry about these steps underneath. I will show them after we do this exercise here. So what you want to do is open up Microsoft Word, go to a new document, and then you can start your numbered list in 2 different ways. You can either start by just hitting 1 period space, and that will then create your start your numbered list, or you can hit the numbering button right up here in the paragraph section on the ribbon, and that will also start your list. So enter your first item, hit enter, enter your second item, and so you'll go down and you'll enter in, follow the instructions on the exercise sheet. So you'll create milk, eggs, bread, canned soup, apples. Go back and add in frozen peas into the middle of the list. You want to practice kind of adding something into the middle of the list. Then you'll go down to the end of canned soup, hit enter, and then hit tab or hit the increase indent button on your ribbon here to go to the second level of your list and add in the types of soup that you want to get. And then finally, we're going to take where it says apples, change that to ingredients for apple pie, and then you're going to go in and you're going to then enter in the different ingredients. The final thing that go ahead and do that there. I'll give you about 3 minutes to do that. If you have questions, please ask them in the YouTube chat or in the chat room on the online-tech-classes page. And I'll be right here. All right, so that's been a few minutes. There weren't any questions, so I'm assuming that everybody's been kind of following along. So I mentioned at the beginning that there are two different types of lists that you can do in Microsoft Word. There's the numbered list, which is what we've been working with here. And then there is also bulleted lists. And so if you start off making one type of list and later on you want to change to another type of list, you don't have to go back and recreate the list. It is actually very easy to switch the type of list that you're working with. So what I'm going to do is we're going to change the list that we've done already from a numbered list. We're going to change it to a bulleted list. And so I'm going to do that there by selecting and highlighting all of the items in my list. Now you'll notice when I highlight the items here, it doesn't highlight the numbers because the numbers are automatically created, so they're largely outside of kind of the control that you have. There are ways to kind of adjust, and I'll kind of show you kind of ways to kind of tweak the way that the numbering looks and works. But you can see when I highlight is that they're not selected as well too, so they kind of stay in place. But I am highlighting all the different items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my ribbon where you can see the numbering thing here is activated, and I'm going to come over here to the left of it where there's a bulleted button. And I'm going to just click bullets. And now you can see it's gone and it's changed all of the numbers to these black dots, and it's changed the letters in my sublist to these open dots. And so this is your basic bulleted list. It's really easy to kind of swap between one or the other just by clicking the different buttons on the ribbon here to change between the different type of lists. Now you can see actually for a shopping list like this here where it really doesn't matter what order the items are listed in such. A bulleted list works well. A numbered list works better for something specifically ordered. In fact, if you're building a web page and you're using HTML, the term actually for either a numbered list or a bulleted list, a numbered list is what's called an ordered list because it's actually in order 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a numerical order. Bullets are called an unordered list because the ordered really doesn't matter with bullets so much. So it's kind of a good way to kind of keep track of which list that you want to do. A lot of times it's also just aesthetic. Do you want it to be, do you want it to have kind of symbols kind of pointing out each item on your list, or do you want to have numerals kind of pointing out each type on the list? Now, you'll notice actually on the ribbon, our two list buttons here. We have our bullet list over here. We have our numbering list over here. These are also the common, like the two-part ribbon buttons that we find in other parts of the ribbon. You notice if I put my mouse over here where it's on the bulleted list, on the left part of the button there, you can see this is kind of the default. This is what turns on or off the type of the bulleted list. So if I turn it off here, you can see it's turned off my list. Turn it on again. I can activate it. I can change it using the left part of the button. I move over to the right part of the button, and I get this little downward pointing arrow, which indicates that there is a menu of options available to me. So I'm going to click on it there, just kind of see what options are available to me for a bulleted list. Now, as I mentioned, the default with bulleted lists is this kind of round dot. But you can see you can actually have different bullets in place as well too. And this bullet library kind of just changes my first bullet here. So if I wanted to, I could have, say, this like diamond symbol here. If I click this here, you can see my first items are all here, is this diamond number here. And if I come down here to chicken noodle, and I can then change this to say squares. And you can see I can change the bullet design for each level of my list. Now if I change this all back to numbered, you can see it changes back. There's my standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, C. You'll notice that numbering is also a two-part button. There's the button to turn on or off numbering lists. There's also the menu that gives me different types of numbering. So the default is 1 period with a little bit of space after that there. But sometimes people like to do lists that use parentheses. So you can see I can actually use parentheses here for the list instead of a period to separate the number from the rest of the items. I could do Roman numerals. So you can see here's my Roman numerals, and the Roman numerals do something a little bit interesting, is that they actually kind of write justify on this line here. So what happens is like this left line here is all even. all the way down. And it will actually, if the number gets longer, it will move off to the left this way here. So that everything kind of remains lined up on this edge, so that this space here between the number and such remains even. Just kind of make everything look neater, because if the number went off this way, these items would start getting pushed off. So this just kind of makes everything line up really nicely. So you can see you can change either the style of numbering that you have, or you can change the, you can see I could actually have letters in my first thing here. I could use lowercase. You can also go through, and if I come down to define new number format, you can actually like design your own numbering like lists, like for your first, second, or third. You can actually say like how exactly you want that list to be used to look. I'm just going to go back to my basic numbered list here. So there's just kind of different things to play around with. And that's one of the things that I always encourage in all of my Microsoft Office classes is don't be afraid to play around. Go in, try to see what the different things look like. If you do something and everything gets kind of really messed up, like, oh no, whoop, I didn't want to go to this and such, I can just go in and undo and go back to what I did before. And I can keep undoing all the way back to the beginning of the document or the beginning of the changes that I made. So don't be afraid to go in and play around and try and see what these different things kind of do on there and such. You're not going to break your computer, you're not going to break Microsoft Word, and you're not going to break your document. So just kind of have some fun and kind of try things out. Now, you'll notice that when I'm creating items in the list, if I'm down here at the end, I'm done with my list, and I'm ready to move on to the rest of my document or to put some notes or something at the bottom of my shopping list here. If I hit enter, it automatically creates a new item on the list. I don't want that there. I don't have a 6th item for my ingredients for apple pies that I need here. So if I hit enter again, so I'm going to hit enter a second time, and you can see now it's gone back a level. So instead of it being the letters, the second tier of the second level of my numbered list, it's going back to being the first level. Now I'm going to hit enter again, and that will exit me from the list. You'll notice right up here on the top, neither of the bulleted or the numbered list buttons are lit up anymore. So that means I'm out of list mode. I'm no longer working on entering a numbered or bulleted list. In this case, it was a numbered list. And so now I'm back in kind of the normal writing mode for Microsoft Word. And so I can go in and I can type in something, check to see if chicken is on sale. And I can add that then, and I can go and print this here, and then I can take my list with me to the supermarket and buy all the things that I need on my list there. So that is numbered and bulleted lists in Microsoft Word. If you have any questions about this here, please ask me in the chat. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you, let's say, 2 minutes. Go in, practice changing the list from a numbered list to a bulleted list, and then back again. And then also exit the list by going all the way down to the end and hitting enter until the number no longer shows up on the line. And then enter in the exercise, check to see if chicken is on sale, but you can enter in kind of whatever you want there and such. So take about 2 minutes. Once again, to kind of demonstrate, is you highlight the whole list, and then you can change between the types of the list. And then when you're at the end, just hit enter a couple times to get out of list mode and enter in a final line at the end of your list. Take about 2 minutes. If you have questions, please ask me them in the chat. All right, so doesn't seem to be any questions, so I hope everybody is following along well. So we are now done with our shopping list, so we're no longer going to need this on here. The next thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to start looking at different things you can do when you're working with a long document. Now, these skills are very useful to know. Let me actually just kind of get into a little bit more kind of friendly kind of conversation mode here. These skills are really useful to know really at the beginning if you know that you're creating a long document, because a lot of these things that we're going to be working on are things that you'll want to start doing from the beginning. It can be a real pain to kind of go back, and if you have a document that's 50, 100, 200 pages long, it can be really tedious kind of going back and doing some of these things that I'm going to be showing you. But if you start doing it at the beginning, when you start creating the document there, not only does it allow you to do a lot of like really complex, not complex, but like a lot of really kind of cool, fancy things in Microsoft Word, but it also means it's going to reduce the chances of mistakes and reduce the amount of work that you have to do in the end. So I'm going to show you a bunch of things. We're going to be working with a document that's already pretty long, that's already made. So unfortunately, we're kind of already going against these, but you want to take what I'm going to be showing here and think about it when you're going to be making a long document, things to just kind of start doing like right from the beginning. So let us go in. So I'm going to close this list. You do not need to save it. So if you close, just close it, and it's going to ask, do you want to save the changes? Just say don't save. It doesn't really matter. And what you want to do now, I need to get to my files, is we are going to open up Advanced Word. We want to open up the AliceInWonderland.docx file that you downloaded from the online technology class resource page. So this is this second file right here. And the best way to do this is right click, go to Save Link As, and then choose a place on your computer to save it. And then we can go and open it up in Microsoft Word like I've done here. Since this file is coming from the internet, Microsoft Word is going to be placing it into protected view. And this is just a thing to kind of make sure that if you ever end up getting a file that has like a malware or an infection in it, that you're just kind of warned to be kind of cautious about it. I will guarantee you can trust this file, so we're going to click Enable Editing to be able to start working on this file here. So what this file is, let me just get to a single page view. There we go. What this file is actually the text of Alice in Wonderland, the book by Lewis Carroll. I happen to grab this here because it's public domain, so we can easily share. It's also a fairly long document. You can see down here at the bottom left in the status bar, it's 56 pages long, so it's a fairly long document that kind of has a lot of the things that we need that makes it convenient to work on for this class. That's why we're looking at Alice in Wonderland, in case you were curious. I'm making it bigger so you can see what I'm doing on the screen here. I remember this time. Okay, so let me look at my notes to kind of make sure that I'm covering what I want to be covering for this class. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do on our file here is we're going to put in page numbers. Page numbers aren't always necessary. They're good with a long document to help keep track of, especially when the document gets printed out and it's put onto paper. Having page numbers, if you have 200 pages that you've printed out and you accidentally, well, not say accidentally, you inevitably drop that pile of 200 pages and everything scatters all over the place. If you have page numbers in place, it kind of helps get all that stuff back into order. So one of the recommendations, as I said, when you're working with a long document, it's always good to start planning from the beginning on how you're going to work with that document and start doing the steps right even before you start typing your first words. So one of the things to always do if you're working with like a really long document is put in page numbers. Page numbers also kind of add like a nice formal quality to a document as well too. So we're going to do that by going into that footer. Now, if you remember from last week's class, our intermediate Word class, you can go into the footer a couple different ways. My preferred way is to come down and just double click down on the bottom of the page. So now I'm in footer mode. So you can see my body of my text is grayed out. And my cursor is down here in the bottom margin of my text. I am now in my header and footer tab on the ribbon up here. I'm going to come over to page number, and I'm just going to do bottom of page, and I'm just going to do plain number 3. I'm just going to put a number over on the right side of the page. Oop. And you can see right there, that's number 1. And then I'm going to click the close header and footer right up here on the ribbon. Click. And now you can see there's 1. If I go down to the next page, there's 2, there's 3, so on, so on, so on. So that's just kind of the first thing again. When you're working with a long document, numbering your pages just makes things really kind of convenient. So one of the first things I'm going to show you with working with a long document is the idea of putting breaks into your document. Now, a lot of people, when they're first starting off with working in Word, if they wanted to say put something onto a new page, they'll hit enter a bunch of times until the line goes down and sticks it down at the bottom and sticks it into sticks the next line over onto the new page. So for example, I put my here and I just hit enter a bunch of times until it goes down to the new page. It's like, okay, there we go. I've now inserted a page break into there. This really is not the recommended way of doing this here, because every time you hit enter, it actually enter is recognized as a symbol. It's recognized as a line. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. This in the home tab at the top right of the paragraph section is this little paragraph symbol. And if I turn this on, what this does is this shows different formatting symbols in Microsoft Word. It's a very useful tool if you're if your Microsoft Word document is doing something a little weird or a little strange. This is a really useful tool to kind of see what might be happening in kind of the invisible background of the file. Now you can see all of these different paragraph symbols there. Because I hit enter so many times, it put all of these here. So this actually is not blank space. This is actually a new line, new line, new line, new line. There's actually something put into there. So there is a better way. So I'm just going to undo. Boop, 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 boop. Control Z. Control Z is your friend. There we go. So I've Control Z'd all the way back. You can see I can't undo anything anymore. There is another better way to put a page break, to split, kind of like move everything down to a new page, and that's by putting a page break in. I mean, it's the whole reason why that function exists. So what we're going to do here in this document here is we're going to have kind of an introductory page, which is going to be this here. It's going to have this note. It's going to have this little introduction about the file that I got from Project Gutenberg, and we're going to put this picture and chapter 1 onto page 2 because we want our book to kind of start properly onto page 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right here where I want to kind of break the page, which is after the end of this section here, this paragraph here. And I'm going to come up here to the Layout tab on my ribbon. And the Layout tab has places where you can adjust the margins. You can change the orientation. So are you going from a portrait page to a landscape page? The size of the page. Unless you're really comfortable and you know you're going to be changing to a different size of the page, don't really mess around with this here. It can really throw off the printer and get errors. It's not pretty messing around with the size. Unless you really know that, hey, I'm going to be printing on legal or I'm going to be printing on A4 paper. Leave the size alone. Just your friendly warning there. Columns, we're going to be coming back to columns later on. This is a fun little thing to kind of play around with. But what we want to pay attention to is we're going to look at right here where it says breaks. And you can see we got our little downward pointing arrow here, which indicates that if I click on this, it's going to open up a menu. This isn't one of those 2-part buttons. All of these are just 1-part buttons. So if I click on this, I'm going to get a little menu here. And there's like several different kinds of breaks here. There's page breaks, which is what we want to do in this case. There's also section breaks, and I'll be talking about these in just a second here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to page break. And so once again, my cursor is sitting right here where I want to put the page break. I want to break the page between this section, this written section up here, and the picture. I want like that line right in between them. I want to split the page there. I want to come here to breaks and do page. And now you can see actually now is it's done the same thing it did when I hit the enter key a bunch of times. It's taken the picture here and put it down onto page 2. But if I go back to home and hit this here and such, you see I don't have all of those enter symbols or those new line, new paragraph symbols in place there. Instead, I get a line here that says page break. Hey, somebody inserted a page break there. So that's just the more refined way of breaking pages, and what it does is it just kind of helps keep the the Word file better organized. And the one thing also is that if I had all those enter keys, if I come up and insert in new lines up here, all of those new lines that were entered there would just get pushed down as I'm adding new lines, which would then push down the rest of my document here. Right now, all of this open space here, I can enter stuff. If I enter stuff before this page break, so if I hit enter, and now you can see this page breaks down a new line, and I come up here and say enter again, I can start inserting stuff right here, and it won't change the place down here until I get down to the bottom of the page. So that's where the page break allows you to break a page, move information down to a new page, and then kind of give you space to work here without affecting the rest of your pages down below. So that's why you want to use a page break over hitting enter a whole bunch of times. So page break. Okay, so now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to mark off each of our chapters. Well, not each of the chapters. We're going to mark off we're going to work with just the first 5 chapters because we don't want to go through the whole document. It's just going to take too long for the course of this class. You know what? Actually, before I organize this part, let me give you 2 minutes. Go into your Microsoft Word document, open up AlisonWonderland.docx. So it should be this file here and such, and then insert a page break in between. Now, let me undo so I can show you again. You're going to insert a page break in between this introductory paragraph of text and the first image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right here at the end of the, make sure, there we go. I'm going to put it right here at the end of this, the paragraph here. I'm going to go to the Layout tab on the ribbon. I'm going to go to Breaks, and I'm going to choose Page Break. And that will then put the page, that will kind of then split these into a new page. So again, you also want to go through and add in, I undid my page numbering. So we're going to go into my footer, page number, bottom of page 3. Okay, there we go. So you want to add in page numbers into your footer. And you'll also want to create a page break between this introductory paragraph of text and the first image. Take 2 minutes. If you have questions, please ask me in the chat. All right, so that's been a couple of minutes. So hopefully you've inserted in your page break and you've gone in and entered the page numbers on there. So when we were looking at our layout tab here and we were looking at the breaks, we saw that there were 2 types of breaks here. There was page breaks and there were section breaks. Now, section breaks are a little bit esoteric in a way because there isn't, a lot of times with section breaks, there isn't a like a physical cue. Like when we added in, when we hit the page break on here and such, we actually saw the text move down to a new page. It moved from page 1 down to page 2, and it put a page break into this section here. Section breaks are a little bit more subtle when it comes to that there. What they do is they actually mark off, as the name says, they actually mark off different sections in your document. And the thing is about different sections is that different sections can handle different formatting. So you could have a section that's in multiple columns. You could have a section that's oriented landscape, while the rest of your document is portrait. And so what happens is, and this is why this is something that you want to think about when you first start creating your document, because it can be tedious after you've created your whole document going back and adding in the section breaks. But if you create those section breaks as you create your document, then it allows you to kind of like work with and design your document as you're working with it instead of after the fact, when things can get a little bit messy or complicated. So what we're going to simulate in this document here is that we're going to make each of our chapters into different sections. So how are we going to do that there? So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to chapter 1 here. And what we're going to do is there's two things that we're going to do with each of the chapter headings for the first 5 chapters. I don't want to go through the whole document because we don't have time. It's tedious. But we're going to, first we're going to do is we're going to mark this as a chapter heading. We're going to use the heading style to mark it as heading. And the reason we're going to do that is that's important for a later step that we're going to be doing when we create a table of contents, is that we need to mark the styles for that there. And then we're going to also, at the end of each chapter, put in a section break. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down and I'm just going to I'm going to actually, where it says chapter 1, down the rabbit hole. This is the name of the chapter. I just want these on one line, so I'm going to come down to down the rabbit hole, hit backspace to kind of take it back, and then just hit space again, so that they're all on one line. And then I'm going to highlight where it says down the rabbit hole. I'm going to go to my home tab, and I'm just going to make this, where's heading 1? I want to make it heading 1. Boom. So there we go. So we're going to make that heading 1. Your heading 1 may look a little different than my heading 1, but you just want to make sure that you use the heading 1 in your style. So now I'm going to go down, down to the bottom until I find the beginning of the next chapter. So here's chapter 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the line above, at the line at the end of chapter 1, above where chapter 2 starts. I'm going to come up here to layout. I'm going to come to breaks. And now you can see there's a bunch of different breaks that can happen here, section breaks. We're going to look at the section breaks here. If I choose next page, what it'll do is next page is a way of doing a section break and a page break at the same time. So if I hit this here, what it'll do is right now, this is on page 6, is that it will put chapter 2 down onto page 7. And mark it as both a section break and a page break there. Moving down continuous means that it's going to just end the section here and start a new section, but not put a page break in between. And this is actually the one we're going to use for this. We're going to use continuous breaks here because we want kind of everything to kind of flow together. It kind of highlights better the later things that I'll show you. The other two down here means that, like, if I wanted to, because if you think about when you have a document, you open up a book and you have the book kind of open before you, you have the odd page over on the side. It's kind of hard to see with the lights. Everything's kind of blurred out. But okay, so you have, if I do, actually I put my hands, you have the odd page over here, the even page there, is you can actually make it jump down to either one of those pages by choosing even page or odd page. We're not going to do it for the course of this class, but I do recommend going in and just kind of playing around and see how these behave and work. So you can follow some of the steps in these exercises instead of creating continuous breaks, create next page or create even or odd pages outside of the class. So let me just show. So I'm here. I'm at the end of chapter 1, at the end of the last line of chapter 1 before it starts chapter 2. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to hit continuous. And now it's inserted a continuous break. And as I told you before, the section breaks are much more subtle than the page breaks are. The only reason that I know that there's a section break here is if I turn on the symbols and see that it tells me that there is a section break there. That's the only way that I know that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just like what I did with chapter 1. I'm going to come here to chapter 2. We're going to put this all into one line simply because I think it looks better. We're going to highlight this. And we're going to make this into heading 1. So all of my chapters are going to have heading 1, be heading 1. And so this is another thing that you want to plan with as you start working on a long document, as you're designing and thinking about that long document, is how are you organizing your sections? Are you going to have chapters? Then put a chapter heading and use one of your heading styles to mark the beginning of the chapter. Are you going to have subheadings in the chapter? So is your chapter going to get broken up into like 2 or 3 parts? Then you can use heading 2 as like the subheading titles. Are those subsections going to get broken up in even smaller sections? Or are you going to have headings for those? You can do a heading 3 and so on. You can kind of keep making those kind of different things there. By marking them as headings allows you to do some really kind of neat things with it later on. And I'll show you that when we create a table of contents. Table of contents is one example. So now that I've made this as heading 1, I'm going to go down to the beginning of chapter 3. So scrolling down. Here's chapter 3. So chapter 3 is right here. I'm going to go to the end of chapter 2, the end of the last line of chapter 2. We're going to go up to layout, breaks, and I'm going to go down and hit continuous, and it's going to put a break in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about, let's say 3 to 4 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes, and if you need more time with that there, let me know in the chat. I'll come back in about 3 minutes and say, do you need more time? If I don't get a response, we'll continue on. So take 3 minutes, go in, and at the beginning of chapter 1, or the beginning of the first chapter, take the chapter and the title, move them to a single line like I've done here. Highlight the chapter heading, make it a heading 1 in your styles in the home tab, heading 1. And then go down to the end of the chapter, the last line of the chapter that you just did that on. Put your cursor at the end of that there. Go up to layout, breaks, and put in a continuous break at the end of the chapter there. And so do that for the first 5 chapters, or however many you can get to in 3 minutes. I'm going to go on and finish it up from my exercise here, so you can watch me do it again if you want to. But go off and do that in your own word. If you have questions, please ask them in either of the chats. All right, so has everybody gone through and marked several of the chapters, the chapter headings as heading 1, and put section breaks? Let me know if you need any more time in either the YouTube chat or the chat on the online tech classes page. Waiting for the chat to catch up if there's anything. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions, so let's continue with the next thing that we're going to be doing. So why have we gone through and put in these section breaks and created the different headings? So the reason we did the headings is that we marked the beginning of each of the chapters is so that we could create a table of contents here at the beginning of our document. So I'm scrolling all the way back up to the start of my document. So I'm right here back on page 1. So here's little 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a table of contents in this section here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the end of the paragraph. I'm just going to hit enter a couple times just to kind of give myself some space. And so now what I'm going to do is I want to insert a table of contents. And so as the term, I think it's insert. No, it's actually not insert. Haha. It's actually over here. Even though I say insert table of contents, where it actually lives is over here under the references menu. And so when I go over to the references tab on my ribbon, over here on the left is our table of contents section. And so creating a table of contents, there are several steps that you need to know to create a table of contents in Microsoft Word. The first is that you need to have heading text marked using the heading styles, whether it's heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. You need to have that marked using the styles throughout your document, or else the table of contents system does not know what text to pull to create the table of contents. Now, you could go in and create your table of contents manually. You could say, okay, so chapter 1 is on page 2, chapter 2 is on page 6, and so on. The issue that happens with creating it manually is that if you go in and make any changes or edits to the document that change the pagination, that change what page number things are on, you then have to manually go back and re-edit the whole table of contents. By using this table of contents system here, it's able to update. You can keep it updated so it'll automatically recreate itself to match what the document actually has. And I'll show how that works. It's kind of cool how that works. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here to the References tab. I'm kind of in an empty space underneath this opening paragraph on page 1. I'm going to click Table of Contents, and I can actually, you can see there's a variety of different kind of styles that I want to do. I could have it could just say Contents. It could say Table of Contents. Something like this here uses different levels. So if I have a chapter heading and then I have like a subsection in the chapter heading and then like subsections, I can have them all show up on here. The same thing kind of shows up here, actually. You can see heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. We've only used one heading, so it's only going to get one list on there and such. Choose either automatic table 1 or automatic table 2, depending on if you want to say contents or table of contents. I like this phrasing, so I'm going to choose automatic table 2. And so now you can see table of contents, chapter 1, down the rabbit hole, starts on page 2, chapter 2, the pool of tears. And so it's pulled that information from the different chapter headings that I made into the heading styles. And it's automatically updated it there. Now, so now let's actually see like how the table of contents can automatically update itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here into chapter 1, and I'm just going to choose a random line. It doesn't matter what line you choose. I'm going to choose this here in parentheses here where it says Alice had no idea what latitude was or longitude either, but she thought they were nice grand words to say. I want to highlight this, and I'm just going to make this heading 1 like I did with the rest of my chapter headings. Heading 1. Ironically, it looks a little different in the middle of the paragraph than it does at the top here, but it's still marked as heading 1. So now I'm going to come up here back to my table of contents. I'm going to click on the table of contents. I'm going to go back to my References tab. And you notice, okay, so here's the button that I used to create the table of contents. There's a button here for add text, but then there's also this update table button. And so that's what I want to do. This will not update automatically. You do have to manually tell the table of contents to update. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit update table, and it's going to give me this little dialog box here. So Word is updating the table of contents. Select one of the following options. Do I want to update the page numbers only, or do I want to update the entire table? Now, like in this case, I've added in a new heading, so it's going to add in a new line into the table of contents there. So I actually want to update the entire table. But if you've only done changes that have changed your page numbers, but you haven't changed your heading titles or what you've marked with the style or the heading style at all, you can just do this update page numbers only. It's a little bit faster. On most fast computers now, you won't notice a difference between one or the other. But if you need to actually add in more information into your table of contents, you'll choose the section option. I'm going to hit OK. And that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Heading 1? Why? Okay, hold on. Just happened. Normal. You know what? I'm wondering if because it's in the middle of a paragraph, I'm wondering if that threw it off. Heading 1. Okay, there we go. So now it looks the same way as the other heading did. Now I'm going to come back up to here. References, update table. Update the entire table. There we go. Okay, now it did what it was supposed to do. So now you'll see that that line that I marked as heading 1 in the middle of a paragraph, it doesn't even have, it wasn't necessarily at the beginning, it wasn't in the beginning or end of a chapter, it was just in the middle of the paragraph. But because I marked it as heading 1, just like I did all of my chapter headings, the table of contents pulled that and stuck it into here and made it, and marked it as it's being on page 3. So that is, so that's the way that you can go in and add and change and update the tables. It won't update automatically. You do have to hit the update table button and trigger it to kind of go through it and recreate it. So let me just show it in kind of reverse. I'm going to go here. I'm going to highlight the line that I made as heading 1. I'm going to put it back to normal. So it's back to just a normal line of text. And I'm going to come up here to my table of contents, references, update table, update entire table, and you can see now it's entered out there because it's no longer marked as heading 1. So it no longer, table of contents is no longer seeing it when it does a scan of my document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the steps of creating the table of contents one more time, and then I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to go and create it in your own document. So I'm going to just come down to just another empty section here. So just an empty section where I have my cursor placed, where this is where I want my table of contents to begin. I'm going to go to the references tab on my ribbon. So you're usually in your home tab here. We're going to go to references. I'm over on the far left is our table of contents section. I'm going to choose table of contents. And I'm going to choose either automatic table 1 or automatic table 2. In this case, I like table 2 because I like where it says table of contents over just contents. And then it should just create your table of contents. So take about 3 minutes. Let me know if you have any questions in either of the chats, and I will answer them if you have any questions. All right, so that is, hopefully you've had time to go in and create your table of contents. I just realized you may notice as I'm working on this here, I'm actually looking up to the left and right instead of like right where you're at over there or at the screen that's right in front of me. And the reason for that there is I actually have my status screens kind of floating above, so that's why I keep kind of looking up to kind of maintain. I can see your chat over here. I can see my streaming information over here. Just kind of make sure that everything is working as well as it should. So that is how to create table of contents. It's a great way to kind of organize and if I go in and enter in something that say changes the page number, like if I go in I just want to demonstrate. We're not going to practice here, but if I say move this down to a new page, it's also likely pushed at least one of my other chapters down to a new page. I can do update table, page numbers only. Nope, I guess it didn't push that onto a new page. Actually, you know what? Let's see. How far do I have to go to get page 2, chapter 2 onto a new page? Yeah, let's put chapter 2 onto a new page just to show you that, say, if I add in a bunch of lines, how that adjusts the table of contents. Update table, page numbers only. And now you can see this is on 7, this is on 11, 15. It updated the whole table. So that's the beauty of using the table of contents system, is that it can automatically update when you make change to the document as you go along. So now the next thing that we're going to look at here is that when we went through and marked and created our different chapter headings. So we marked our chapter headings as heading 1 to make it for the table of contents. We also put in the section breaks. And then as I mentioned when I was talking about the section and page breaks, section breaks are very subtle. There isn't usually a very visual difference about like what happens to the document when you put it in there. So why did we put in those section breaks? So let me show you kind of some of the things that you can do with those section breaks. So let's go down to chapter 2. So the chapter 2 that I've just pushed down to a new page. Okay, so here we are in chapter 2. Now, if you remember, we marked the end of a section. The end of chapter 1 is the end of a section on there. And then we marked the very end of chapter 2 as like a new section break there. So chapter 2 exists in its own separate section. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come here to my layout tab. I'm just going to put my cursor anywhere into chapter 2. It doesn't matter where your cursor is. And I'm just going to go to columns, and I'm going to hit 2 columns. So columns is one of these ones that has a little menu. When you click on it, you get a menu that you're able to choose, and they have 1, 2, 3. Are they left justified, right justified? You can, if you want to do more than 3 columns, you can go to more columns, and you can create as many columns as you want within reason. I'm just going to do 2. And so now what it's done is it's now put in from the end of the section. So that's why this got moved up to there. Is that, remember all those enters that I put in here that pushed that down to a new page? It pulled it up because that just finished this column here. And now you can see, so chapter 1 is still a single column. So I get to the end of the section for chapter 1 and move into the new section. And now chapter 2 is in 2 columns. We're going to go down until we hit the end of chapter 2. We're also, remember, we put in a section break between chapter 2 and chapter 3. Now chapter 3 is back to being a single column. Now, if I had created this document as one long document without putting section breaks in there and chose the 2 columns, the entire document would have been made into 2 columns. By putting in those section breaks, that allowed me to just choose a very specific section to be made into 2 columns. And so when you create the 2 columns, they're created evenly, they're evenly sized. So so if there's suppose there's only like a small section of the Word document that you're working on that you want to be in several different columns, you can put a section break before it, put a section break after that section there. So that ends up being its own little section. Make that into choose columns just for that section there, and then the rest of your document will remain the same. One of the other things that you can do within a section is you can change the orientation of the pages. So if I come over here and I say landscape, Now, if I come up to, here's chapter 1, which is, remember chapter 1 is its, was interesting. Um, yeah. Chapter 1 was its own section there. Move down, hit chapter 2. Now, chapter 2, I just said, first of all, it's still in 2 columns, but I told it that chapter 2 is going to be printed in landscape printing instead of portrait. And then I'm going to come down until I hit chapter 3, which is back again to its own section. It's back to being a single column. Let's make chapter 3 into 3 columns. So chapter 1 is 1 column, chapter 2 is 2 columns, chapter 3 is 3 columns. Seems fitting enough whimsy for Alice in Wonderland. So now you can see chapter 3 is its own columns, and it's also back to being portrait because it's its own section. So the sections allow me to do these different actual physical formatting of the document and constrain it in my document to a specific part of it, to a specific section. So if I go down until I hit, actually, wow, chapter 3 looks really good as 3 columns. Come down and hit chapter 4. Chapter 4 is back to being its own single column because, again, it's a different section because we marked them all as individual sections. Now you'll notice if I come into here, into say my 3 columns here, these are all equally sized. You'll notice right up here on my ruler, and if the ruler is not visible on your document, you can come here to the View tab, and you can check the box saying ruler. I always like to have the ruler visible. It's something. It was a default in Microsoft Word all the way back into like the late 90s. And earlier it was like Microsoft Works. Like the earliest versions of like the word processors that I learned to use always had that ruler visible that shows like where margins were and where the indents and everything were. And so I just always like to have it on. So that's why I always recommend kind of coming to your View tab and turning that on. But you'll notice that on the ruler here, you can see in the white section is the size of each of my columns. I can adjust the size of the columns by, if I click, no, that's not the right. If I click and drag this little diamondy thing here, oops, that's actually doing the, there we go. So what I want to do is I bring my mouse up to the ruler, like right to the edge of the white line, and you can see actually as I can make them all narrower, they'll kind of stay equal to each other as I do it. There are ways, if I go into my layout and I go into columns and I go into more columns, I can actually get, so right now it's set at equal column widths. I can make them different column widths. So it's something that you can go in and you can play around with on yourself, on your own. You can choose how many columns, and you can see this can go up as high as you really want, but sometimes it just gets impractical into how many columns you can have on a page at a time. So, and you can see it applies to this section, this point forward, or the whole document. You can actually make the columns ignore the section breaks, but it's useful. It's usually helpful to use those section breaks so that you can kind of be more focused how you use columns or like the orientation formatting or those kind of different changes that you can do within a section. So I hope that's been clear. So what I'm going to say now is take about 2 minutes, go down to your chapter 2, and what you're going to do is you're going to go to the layout tab on your ribbon, go to columns, and hit the 2, make that into 2 columns, and then go down to chapter 3 and make that into 3 columns, and just kind of see how the difference works. Take about 2 minutes. If you have questions, please ask me in the chats. And then we'll move on to the final part of this class, which is going to be looking at how to work collaboratively in Microsoft Word. All right, so did you have fun making columns? So the final thing that we're going to look at in this class is we're going to look at the various different ways that you can work on, you can collaborate with other people using Microsoft Word. So the first and most straightforward way is using the comments and the track changes system that's in Microsoft Word. So let's actually take a quick look, let's do some quick exercises with this here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to close our Alice in Wonderland document. We're no longer going to need this for the rest of the class. So close. You can save it, don't save it, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to click don't save. And now I'm going to open up, there's the third link on the tech pages here, the practice document. Right click, save link as, choose where you want to save it on your computer. And then go and open up that file. So here's Microsoft Word Advanced Practice. And just like before, this is going to open up in protected view. Come over and click Enable Editing. And then I am just going to zoom in to make it easier for you to see. So this is a document that I've created for the purpose of this class where somebody has gone in and created comments and turned on the track changes. So where these functions exist in Microsoft Word is under the Review tab on the ribbon. So we're in the Home tab, as we are when we always open up a Word document. We're going to come over to Review. And right in the middle here, this is the Review tab is where you find things like your word count or your spell check. Those kind of things show up in here. You can change languages. But right here in the middle, we have comments and we have tracking. So this is a document, in our kind of simulated setup here, this is a document, say, that you've written, you've sent off to a colleague for advice or editing information. They've used the comments and the track changes to kind of put their information in there, and they've sent it back to you. So that's kind of the situation that we're looking at here. You'll notice that the track changes button is turned on. So if somebody sends you a document for review and you want to be able to track changes, what you'll do is you'll come to the Review button tab here, and you'll click on track change. You'll just click on track changes, and it will turn it on. So then what happens is anytime that you make a change in the document, it will indicate, like for example, in this case right here, the word to was entered twice. It was incorrectly entered a second time on here. So by deleting it, it's still visible because we're still seeing what they call all markup. We're still seeing all of the original document, but then it's also crossed off, which means that it was deleted. So the black text, the text that's in black, is the original text that's remaining. Anything in red, at least on this document here, are things that the are suggested changes here. So if you receive a document that somebody has done track changes or comments on, you can either look at the whole thing, but sometimes it might also be a long document. Remember, earlier in this class, we talked about long documents, things that are going to be 20, 30, 50, 400 pages long. You can't see it all in a single glance like we can see here. So what you can do actually is you can actually step through all of the changes. You can start at the beginning and do kind of a systematic review of all the different changes or recommendations that they make. What you do is you start here, you click on the first one, so you're right into here. And so what happens is this is highlighted underneath, and there's this dotted line that comes over to the side here that indicates this is that there was a comment made about this here. And so this is the comment over here. Should we try to personalize this from our database? And in the later versions, Microsoft Word 365, Word 2016, Word 2019, there's some more functionality. I can come over here and click reply and actually reply to this comment saying, you know, I think we can leave this to be impersonal for this situation here. So I can actually say, let's leave this impersonal. Ironically, it looks like I'm responding to myself for now. And then when I send this back to the person, they'll see the reply to my comment. You can have this whole like discussion dialogue in the comments here about the and then what happens is that now I've responded to this here, it's good. I'm going to come up here under the changes. So we have our comments over here, tracking. Right next to it is changes. I'm going to click accept. And that kind of locks that in, saying, okay, this is good until the next round of changes that we make. And then what happens is I'm going to click next. And what that will do, that moves that there to my next comment, next, and that's going to move me down to the next change that happened in the document here. In this case, what it was the reviewer noticed that the word sources was incorrectly spelled, was misspelled. And so they deleted that and entered in the correct spelling of the word. And it's like, okay, this makes sense. This is a change that makes sense. I'll come up here and say accept. And you'll notice now that the crossed out misspelled sources is gone, because it's like, okay, that was deleted. We'll take it out. I've accepted that deletion. And now my next change is the re-entry of the correct spelling. So I'm going to accept that. And now you'll notice that once I accepted that there, this is now black. It's no longer marked in red like the other ones is, because it's been an accepted change. It's no longer basically that change I've accepted, and when it gets sent to another reviewer, or I make changes on here now, my changes will show up, but I've accepted the changes that the reviewer has already said. So I'll move to our next one, which is this 2, which was misentered. So I'm going to accept that. So you can see it gets rid of that there because it was crossed off. It indicated that it was deleted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on next, previous. So now we're on this deleted committed. We're going to accept that. We're in the correct spelling of committed, so I'm going to accept that. And then we're at a column here. It's like, okay, let's list some of our family. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to say, you know what, I don't really like this idea. I'm going to reject this one here. And you'll notice now it deleted the comment that's there. And it's no longer, the comment is no longer marked there. So you do have the power, because again, it's your document. You have full discretion over what it says or how it says it. The reviewer is just offering suggestions. And so you're able to accept or reject the suggestions as you go through. This next one down here, I guess they added in a dash here. Let's accept that. Oops, actually, they deleted the dash. Ooh, that was bad. Undo. We actually want to reject this change here. This is actually deleting the space between challenging and venture. That's actually an incorrect change. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reject that change. I'm going to move to the next one. And so this one here, like the this phone number was written previous with parentheses. Maybe the reviewer prefers to have a phone number written with just dashes. But you know what? For this case, I like the parentheses, so we're just going to reject their suggested changes here by just clicking reject. And now I'm back up to the top up here, and this is kind of an accepted comment that we have. So everything's been kind of accepted in this case. So when you receive changes, you can go through and accept and kind of put in. And so now we're seeing what the final version of the document. This is that all markup. Now suppose if I want to go in and add changes. So it's like, okay, so at a regular corporate address, this is our address here, blah, blah, blah. And you can see as I start typing in and adding that line into there and such, it shows up as red and underlined. And the reason for that there is that I have track changes turned on. So it's tracking the changes that I'm making. So now when I send this on to another person and they see those track changes, they will know what I changed. And then they'll be able to accept or reject. They would be able to do the same steps that I did, the exception or the rejection of the changes like I did before. Adding a comment is really easy. What you do is you highlight what you want to comment about, and you just come up and select new comment, and then it just creates this new section over in the bar that I can now start typing a new comment here. Enter. You can do everything that you want to do, and then you just kind of click back in your document to continue working on it. So that is the track changes system that works in Microsoft Word. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, another 2 minutes. Open up the MS Word Advanced Practice document that's available on the what happened to the browser here? This is really weird. on. What's going on? Oh, okay. My browser's just like really messed up right now. Hold on. Let me actually close this out and reopen that. Oh, I just crashed Firefox. No, I didn't. Is oh, window. Okay, I'm still streaming. I'm just not seeing my streaming. Something really strange happened. Oh God, it does not like to be maximized. I do not know what's happening to my keyboard right now. Or to are available. Okay, you know what? I might have to change browsers here quickly. Fun. Oh, I mean everything's top Chrome. Oh, what there? Don't save. Huh. Like my whole part of my top screen. You know what? Let me just change the big key. Ah, there we go. Wow. Whole computer is just all right. Let's see. So we're back to here again. Ooh. But still, hold on. I'm gonna have to rely on Google to get me to where I need to go. Just getting this back in place so I can see how everything, see my chat here. Control T. Box in the way. I wonder if it's an issue with okay. And go. Oh, it's nice. Google actually pulled out the information. I just actually just want to show what I just saw here. This is kind of cool. Is that Google actually pulled the information for the schedule for the classes right into here. That's really convenient. So we're going to go here. Okay, so yeah. So where was I? I was here. We're going to work with the practice document here. Oh, this is not right. Advanced Word, and you're going to go through and do the track changes in the advanced. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up this and go to review. This is now working fine. Word is working fine. Just everything else is not. So yeah, go to review, and what you're going to do is you're going to go to next, and it will take you to the first change or comment, and then accept or reject it as necessary. And let me know if you have any questions. I don't know if I'll be able to see them that well. I can see the questions here. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and take about 2 minutes, and then we will look at different file formats and how to work simultaneously in Google Documents. Great. So I'm not seeing any questions. So let's kind of move on with the rest of the class. We have about 20 minutes left. So when you're working with other people in Microsoft Word, you don't necessarily always have to use track changes or the comments or things there and such. Sometimes you just want to send the file to other people and you want to make sure that they're able to open it and use it for their own purposes, or just be able to open and read it and maybe not be able to make any changes. So by doing that there, you have some options about kind of the different file formats that you can change it. So when you create a Microsoft Word file, it is usually saved as a .docx file. That's the default for any Microsoft Word file that was created from Microsoft Word 2007 to the present. Prior to 2007, so Microsoft Word 2003, Microsoft Word 2000, the original versions of Microsoft Word, they would save the files as .doc files, so .doc files. And so sometimes there might be people who need to have that older version, or you might receive a file that's .doc. And that will open up fine in any version of Microsoft Word. The reverse isn't necessarily true. People with older versions of Microsoft Word may not be able to open up a .docx file. So there's usually special steps that you have to do at that point. At this point, we are almost 15 years. 2007, actually, we're about 14 years. We're almost 15 years out from the .docx file being the .docx file being the default file for Microsoft Word. So most people are not using those older versions anymore. You don't really have to worry about that difference any longer. The thing to know about a docx file when you send it to someone else and they open it up in Microsoft Word, by default is whatever the basic settings are, they can make whatever changes they want to that document, and then they can save it as their own document, and they can send it out, and there won't be, if they don't have track changes on there's very little ways to tell that it was modified or changed in that way. So sometimes you may want to send somebody a document and you don't want them to be able to change it. You want them to only be able to see the text, maybe print it out, but you don't want them to be able to change the information that's on there. So you can do that. You can actually say, one of the things that got added in Microsoft Office 2007 is you can save the files as a PDF file. Prior to that there, you needed to have specific PDF creation software. You needed to have like Adobe Acrobat or some other softwares that can create PDF. But starting in 2007, you can then start saving your Microsoft Word files as a PDF file. Now the advantages of PDF stands for Portable Document Format, was that it was designed to be a format of a file that can be opened onto any computer on any system. So it can be opened on Windows, it can be opened on Mac, it can be opened on Linux. Most of the modern web browsers today are able to open up PDFs right inside of the web browser, so you don't even need another piece of software. The advantage of this here is that the file would open up and look the same. Is that basically the file was like big, like where line breaks were and all of that information. So let me actually, I don't have it open anymore. Here we go, the file here. Open this up. So my document, so you can see here, so this was originally a Word document that I saved as a PDF, and I can resize this or scroll and such. It's going to look the same on my computer, it's going to look the same on your computer, and if we both print it out, it's going to look the same coming from each of our own printers. So that's the advantage of the PDF file, is that it kind of locks the document into a fixed state so that it will always look and print the same way no matter who's looking at it or opening it up or printing. This is where people also kind of run into some issues, is they end up, say, maybe saving their resume as a PDF file and don't keep the docx file. And then when they go make changes, they get stuck with that PDF file. They have to go back and almost rewrite the whole thing, because in order to change a PDF file, you do need to have a much more expensive piece of software. Viewing PDF files is easy and free. Changing them is expensive, and it's not difficult, but it's not as convenient as just reading them. So if you are going to, say, make your resume or any other important file into a PDF, also keep your original Word document file as well to the docx file. So that's where you can go make changes if you need to. And that's where, like, for example, like this file here, you can see up on the file name up here, this is like revision 2020-98. I just made these revisions last week. I've revised this file 5 or 6 times as I keep updating this class. And so I just then create a new PDF file from the revisions because I have my original docx file. The final thing that you can do is that the nice thing about sending somebody a Word document either in the docx file or as the PDF means that all the formatting that you do, so like here I have my title here, I have this being italics, I have this being bold, they'll carry through. Like if somebody opens up this Word file on their own Word, it will look very similar. They open up the PDF, it will look exactly like this PDF. But sometimes you may want to send a file and not have any of the formatting go with it. You don't want to have the bold or the italics. And so you can save it as file formats. You can there's a couple different file formats out there. There's rich text format, RTF files, which actually has things like italics, it has things like bold. It was an update from the original text file, the TXT file, that allowed you to do some basic formatting in there. Not anywhere near as complex as you can do with Microsoft Word, but you can still do some basic things. And if you save a Microsoft Word with some of those basic formatting changes, it will also update in, it will also show up in the RTF file. You can actually save the file the Word document as an RTF file and keep some of that formatting. Finally, you can also save the Word document file as a TXT or a text file, and the text file removes all the formatting. So if I save this file here as a text file, a TXT file, the title, all of this section here, all of this here would all look exactly the same. There's no centering. Everything's going to be along left on lines. There's no bulleted lists. Everything looks exactly the same. It's all the same font. Every letter is the same width and size, or should be. But what happens is a text file can be read anywhere on any computer, and sometimes you do need to clean out the formatting in a Word document. And if you just want to get to the text, if you just want the text and you don't want any of the fancy, you don't want this address link here or the italics, you don't want this fancy numbered list and the way this is organized, there's that you just want the text. Saving it as a text file and pulling and just getting the text information is very useful. It also is useful if you're ever doing anything you're building on the web and somebody sent you something in a Word document file and then you're going to put that onto the web. I always recommend against copying and pasting straight from Microsoft Word into like a web document. And the reason for that is that Microsoft Word has a lot of hidden formatting code behind it. A Microsoft Word document, the docx file format, is in many ways, it's a web page that you're editing and creating. And so when I make something bold, it's actually using HTML tags to make that bold and telling the computer. So what Word is almost a very specialized web editor and viewer. Just like Firefox is a web browser, Microsoft Word is very, very specialized to work as a word processor. And that was the change that they did from the original doc file to a docx file, that allowed them to kind of have more flexibility, more power with how that file, how the file format works. But the problem is a lot of that hidden code carries over into the web document. And so by pasting it, by making it a text file first, you clean out all that extra code that's in the background and you just end up with just the text. So that's just kind of the recommendation. So when let me go into Word here. So when you're saving a file, if I come here and go to Save As, and I do this drop-down list here, you can see the different formats that I've been talking about. Here's the docx file, that the default, the one that it will normally always save as. Moving down, we have the Word 97 to 2003, the .doc file. Moving down further, here's the PDF. So if I wanted to save this file as a PDF, I can come down and choose this here, and it will save it as a PDF file. Moving down, here's that rich text format, or that RTF, and then here's also the TXT file. There's other ones here also as well too, but those are just kind of the big ones, the most common ones that you might send out to somebody. So those are different file formats, and when you're sending the file, think about how you want them to be able to interact with the file. Do you want them to be able to make changes, hit edits, and maybe possibly pass it off as their own file? Keep it as the docx file. If you just want them to be able to read it and maybe print it, and you want it to, when it prints, to look exactly like it looks how you designed it on your computer, save it as a PDF file and send them the PDF file. If you want to get rid of all the formatting and you just want to have the basic text on there, save it as a plain text file. So there's just kind of those considerations to think of when you're working with other people in Microsoft Word, how you want them to interact with the document that you're sending them. So now the final thing that we're going to look at, let me just quickly check because I can't see the chat otherwise. Because my browser is also, I'm going to have to restart my computer when I'm all done with this. Something really weird going on here, but let me just quickly check to see if there's anything in the YouTube chat. I have to kind of go in a roundabout way to get to this. Do I see anything? Nope, nothing there. Well, I probably wouldn't see anything in the past, but yeah, okay. So the final thing that we're going to look at tonight is we're going to look at collaboratively working in Microsoft, in Google Docs. So Google Docs is Google's cloud. Cloud is basically anything that basically works on the internet over the web. So it's web-based only. And so it's their web cloud, they're the cloud web word processor. It works very, very similar to Microsoft Word. Almost a lot of the same things that you can do in Microsoft Word, you can do in Google Docs. And so actually, let me click. We're going to open this up in a new window so that I can actually see it work. There we go. So you can see over here, I mean, it doesn't have the ribbon, but it has a lot of the same tools, like the styles. So here's the styles that we saw. Here's the fonts. Here's the size of the fonts, bold, italics. So it's a much more basic thing that we see with the ribbon, but it's still a lot of the same tools that are there. And under like tools or view, we see a lot of the same things that we see on the other ribbon. Again, it's not as complex as Microsoft Word is, but it does the really cool thing is that if any of you watching this right now have clicked on this link, we can start making changes to this document. We can actually see the changes that the other person is making at the same time. It's a really exciting kind of fun thing to do. So if I go in and type in, this is the instructor typing this, you'll see that change happening in real time if you have this open, and then you can make your changes. I can see your changes happening in real time as well too. So it's really exciting, and you can do things like we can I can go in and I can make a comment if I wanted to comment, and I could say, hey, are you changing this? And then what happens is you can then you can respond to my comments, and we can have a discussion on this here as we're working on the document at the same time. And there's really no limit. I've seen documents with like up to 250 people working on the same time, and it's insane. It's mad. It's cool. And it's a really interesting thing that Google has been able to put together. The nice thing about working in Google Docs and working with like a cloud-based Word document here and such is that, first of all, this is being saved all the time. So I never have to remember to save. It's kind of, if something happened, if I lost internet connection, my computer shut down, if anything, at most I've maybe lost a few seconds, like 2 to 5 seconds worth of work. Otherwise, everything else here is working exactly the same as it should. Everything will say, I open it back up again and it'll all be right there like the way I left it before too. I can also access this from any computer that I have access to the web and can sign into my Google account. So I could go to any, I could go to work and sit down at my computer at work and pull up this file and be able to make the changes there, and then go home and see exactly all those changes and continue working on it there. I can do Google Docs editing on my phone, on my tablet, or on any computer really easily. And so that's the beauty of it being online, on the web, and in the cloud, is that you have access to it anywhere else. So that is our advanced Microsoft Word class. If you are interested in continuing your learning, the Ferguson Library does provide access to Udemy, which is an online learning site. You'll want to go through it through this address that I have written here, or off of the Ferguson Library webpage. We have it in a couple different links in our A to Z list, or also on our careers and education page. But if you go in and do a search for Udemy on the Ferguson Library page, it will take you to a link where you can then go and access it there. And I've suggested a couple courses here. There's Master Microsoft Word, Beginner to Advanced, Comprehensive Microsoft Word, and then Professional Documents Using Word 2013, which is an older version of Word, but everything that this class covers will be possible in Word 2016, Word 2019, or Word 365, depending on whatever your version is. So this is still a valuable class that might actually provide information as you're working in Microsoft Word. The final thing that I would like for you to do is please go and access our survey link here if you enjoy taking this class and you want us to continue offering classes like this year. Hopefully, some point we'll be able to start offering classes again in the library. But for now, we're going to be continuing streaming here on YouTube with our technology classes. You can go to this link here, projectoutcome.org/responses/50672, and that will take you to the Advanced Microsoft Word survey. This link is also available on the Online Tech Classes webpage by clicking the Evaluation Survey link right here. So please fill out the survey. I hope you enjoyed your evening. And next week, same time at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, so Tuesday, September 22nd, I will be doing Basic Microsoft Excel. So we've done our Word classes, and now we're moving on to the next major program in Microsoft Office. We'll be doing Basic Microsoft Excel. So we'll be looking at a quick tour of what Microsoft Excel, how Microsoft Excel works, how to enter in data, and do some basic functions and formatting and things on there. So I hope to see you there. I hope you had a good evening. And with that, hope you have a good